Season 2 of Daniel Boone arrived in 1965 and changed everything television thought it knew about Westerns. An episode so violent that NBC almost pulled it from the air completely. A Native American character who became more beloved than the hero himself, and a frontier family held hostage in scenes that made parents across America reach for their phones to complain. These are 15 moments from Daniel Boone's second season that pushed boundaries, sparked controversy, and created television history that viewers still remember 60 years later. Number 1. The hostage camp scene that almost ended the show. Season 2 brought viewers face to face with something they'd never seen on television before. In The Hostages, Daniel Boone and his entire family were captured, tied up, and held at gunpoint by a renegade group that showed no mercy. The camera didn't look away. It stayed focused on their faces, on the fear, on the helplessness of a frontier hero stripped of his power. Every close-up felt deliberate, forcing viewers to sit with the discomfort, to witness vulnerability they'd never associated with Daniel Boone before. Parents across America reached for their phones to complain. NBC Standards and Practices reviewed the episode and immediately raised serious concerns about whether it should air at all. They wanted it pulled from the air completely, but Fez Parker refused to back down. He told executives that sanitizing the frontier would make the show feel like a lie. The censors pushed harder, demanding cuts to the hanging scene, the near scalping, and the moment when a child stared down the barrel of a rifle. Parker made it clear he was willing to let the public know if NBC was softening the realities of frontier life. He believed audiences deserved honesty, even when that honesty was uncomfortable. The network blinked first. They kept the episode mostly intact, but added a warning at the beginning. That warning itself became part of television history. One of the first times a network acknowledged that what viewers were about to see might disturb them. When it aired, ratings exploded. Critics called it the most powerful hour of television that year. Number 2. The moment Mingo became a legend. In Season 2, that happened with Mingo. Ed Ames brought something to the role that writers hadn't planned for. Intelligence, dignity, a quiet authority that made you lean forward when he spoke. In The Hostages, while Daniel Boone was tied up and powerless, Mingo stood watching, not reacting, not panicking, calculating. When the rope was placed around a man's neck, ready for hanging, Mingo didn't draw a weapon. He didn't fight, he spoke. And somehow, his words carried more weight than any rifle. Viewers had never seen a Native American character written this way on television. How old were you when The Hostages episode aired in 1965? Most shows in the 1960s made indigenous characters either violent threats or silent companions. Mingo was neither. He was Oxford-educated, philosophical, and often smarter than everyone else in the room. Letters poured into NBC praising his character. For the first time, many kids were just as excited to dress as Mingo as they were Daniel Boone. Ed Ames, the singer who'd never acted before, had become the heart of the show. Number 3. The silhouette that defined an era. One image from Season 2 appeared in nearly every episode, and it became the visual signature of the entire series. 2 men on horseback, riding side by side against a massive frontier landscape. Daniel Boone and Mingo, silhouetted against the wilderness, heading into unknown territory. The camera would pull back wide, showing how small they were against the mountains and forests. That shot wasn't accidental. The director of photography spent hours finding the perfect angle, waiting for the right light. They'd film it at golden hour, when the sun was low and the shadows were long. The shadows stretched across the ground like fingers reaching into the unknown. The composers timed the music to match the rhythm of the horse's movement. Each hoofbeat synced perfectly with the drum beats in the score. When that scene played, viewers knew they were watching something bigger than just a TV show. They were watching American mythology being created in real time. That image carried weight beyond entertainment. It told a story without words, about partnership, about facing the wilderness together, about 2 souls bound by loyalty stronger than blood. Decades later, people who couldn't remember specific episode plots could still describe that image perfectly. 2 riders, side by side, heading into danger together. It became shorthand for friendship, loyalty, and the American frontier itself. That single visual choice made Season 2 unforgettable. Number 4. the scene networks tried to hide. Season 2 tested the limits of 1960s television in ways that still feel shocking today. In The Hostages, there's a scene where the camera focuses on a knife moving towards someone's scalp. The blade gets closer, the victim's eyes widened, the music builds, and then, at the last possible second, the camera pulls away. You don't see the act itself, but your mind fills in what happens next. That's psychological horror, and it didn't exist on primetime television in 1965. The power wasn't in what you saw, but in what you imagined. The camera work forced viewers to become participants, their own minds creating the horror the screen refused to show. NBC standards and practices demanded the scene be removed entirely. They argued it was too violent, too disturbing, that children would have nightmares. The producers refused. They pointed out that the camera never actually shows violence. It shows the threat of violence, which is historically accurate to frontier life. The debate went back and forth for days, with network executives threatening to shelve the entire episode. After days of argument, NBC allowed it to stay, but only because the camera pulled away. They added extra conditions, a longer warning, a later time slot consideration, and a promise that future episodes would show more restraint. Do you remember watching scenes like this late at night? That scene generated more viewer complaints than any other moment in the show's history. It also made Season 2 impossible to forget. Number 5. Rebecca Boone faces death alone. Patricia Blair demanded that her character be written as more than just a worried wife standing in a doorway. Season 2 gave her exactly what she asked for, and it came with genuine danger. In The Hostages, Rebecca Boone is held at gunpoint. Not as a background moment, not as a quick scare. The camera stays on her face. You see the fear, but you also see her thinking, calculating her options, refusing to break down. Did you watch it on a black and white TV? Or were you lucky enough to have color? In 1965, showing a woman in mortal danger on primetime television was controversial. Networks worried it would upset audience. But the scene worked because Patricia Blair played it with such strength. She wasn't screaming or fainting. She was a mother protecting her children, a frontier woman who understood that survival meant staying calm under pressure. When the episode aired, letters poured in from female viewers thanking the show for depicting a woman who felt real. Rebecca Boone wasn't helpless. She was trapped in an impossible situation and finding a way through it. That scene changed how television portrayed women in westerns. It proved audiences wanted complexity, not stereotypes. Number 6. When Mingo challenged the hero. Season 2 brought something rarely seen on television at the time. A Native American character who didn't just follow orders. Mingo challenged Daniel Boone directly, questioned his decisions, and offered different perspectives. In one episode, Boone wanted to handle a conflict with violence. Mingo argued for negotiation. The two men stood face to face, neither backing down, both convinced they were right. The writers could have made Mingo submit, the way most TV sidekicks did. Instead, they let the disagreement stand. Sometimes Mingo's way worked better. Sometimes Boone's instincts proved right. But the respect between them never wavered. What made these moments revolutionary wasn't just the disagreement itself, but how the show filmed them. The camera stayed tight on both faces, giving equal weight to each perspective. Neither man was framed as foolish or wrong. They were simply different, and that difference made them stronger together. Ed Ames pushed hard for these scenes. He told writers that Mingo needed to be an equal partner, not a follower. The result was a dynamic that felt decades ahead of its time. Viewers saw two men from different worlds treating each other with genuine respect. No condescension, no stereotypes. Just two friends who didn't always agree, but always had each other's backs. That kind of partnership didn't exist anywhere else on television in 1965. Number 7. The Cabin Under Siege. Season 2 perfected a visual technique that became a recurring source of tension throughout the series. The camera would show the Boone family's cabin, peaceful and quiet in the wilderness. Then slowly, the music would shift. Something was coming. The camera would cut to shadows moving through the trees, figures approaching, danger closing in. Inside the cabin, Rebecca would notice something wrong. She'd reach for the rifle. The children would be sent upstairs, and Daniel Boone would position himself by the window, waiting. This structure appeared in multiple Season 2 episodes, and it worked every single time, because the cabin represented safety in a dangerous world. When that safety was threatened, viewers felt it viscerally. The production team spent extra time on these sequences, building suspense through camera angles and sound design rather than dialogue. They understood that fear works best when you see it coming slowly. The frontier was unpredictable, and the cabin scenes reminded audiences that nowhere was truly safe. Even home could become a battleground. That recurring imagery made Season 2 feel more grounded and more terrifying than most westerns on television. Number 8. The moment the hero looked human. There's a small detail in Season 2 that most viewers never consciously noticed, but it changed everything. In quiet moments, between action sequences, Daniel Boone would remove his coonskin cap. He'd wipe his forehead, run his hand through his hair, and for just a few seconds, he wasn't a frontier legend anymore. He was a tired man doing an impossible job. Fez Parker insisted on these moments. He told directors that heroes need to show exhaustion, doubt, vulnerability. The cap was iconic, but it was also a mask. When Boone took it off, audiences saw the real person underneath. In one episode, after a particularly brutal confrontation, Boone sits alone outside the cabin, cap in his hands, staring at nothing. No dialogue, just a man processing what he'd been through. The camera holds on his face for what feels like forever, showing every line of exhaustion, every shadow of doubt. You can see him replaying the fight in his mind, wondering if he made the right choices. When shows just let characters sit and think quietly, those quiet scenes made the action sequences hit harder because you understood the emotional cost. Daniel Boone wasn't invincible. He was human. The show never let him shake off violence like it meant nothing. Every fight left marks, not just on his body, but on his conscience. And Season 2 made sure viewers never forgot that. Number 9. The hanging that changed television. The Hostages featured a scene that NBC censors almost cut from the episode entirely. A man stands with a noose around his neck. The camera doesn't look away. It holds on his face as the rope tightens. You see his fear, his desperation, the moment he realizes he might actually die. The silence in that moment felt heavier than any dialogue. You could hear the rope creaking, the wind moving through the trees, nothing else. Then Mingo speaks, not with a weapon, not with violence, but with words that carry enough weight to stop an execution. His voice cuts through the tension like a blade, calm and measured, each word chosen with precision. The scene was unprecedented for 1960s television. Networks had unwritten rules about showing death, especially hangings. They were considered too disturbing for family viewing. But the producers of Daniel Boone argued this was historical reality. Frontier justice was brutal, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. The compromise they reached kept the scene intact, but required a warning before the episode began. NBC insisted on that warning, fearing backlash from sponsors and parent groups. When it aired, the response was immediate and divided. Some viewers praised it as the most honest depiction of frontier life they'd ever seen on television. Others were horrified that such content appeared during prime time. Newspapers ran editorials debating whether the scene crossed a line. But everyone agreed on one thing: they couldn't stop watching. Number 10. The quiet moment that broke hearts. Season 2 understood something that most action shows forgot. The most powerful scenes aren't always the loudest. In one episode, after the hostage situation was resolved and everyone was safe, there's a brief moment where Rebecca Boone simply holds her children. No dialogue, no dramatic music, just a mother who came close to losing everything, holding on to what matters most. The camera stays on Patricia Blair's face for several long seconds. You can see the relief, the exhaustion, the lingering fear that hasn't quite faded yet. Her hands shake slightly as she pulls her children closer, as if letting go might make them disappear. It's a small moment, maybe 15 seconds total, but it carries more emotional weight than any action sequence in the episode. The director fought to keep that scene exactly as it was, refusing studio pressure to add dialogue or cut it shorter. He understood that sometimes silence says everything. Viewers in 1965 weren't used to seeing this kind of restraint on television. Most shows would have filled the silence with explanations or moved quickly to the next plot point. They would have had Rebecca say something reassuring, something to wrap up the trauma neatly. Do you remember when television trusted audiences enough to understand emotion without spelling it out? That quiet moment reminded everyone watching that frontier life wasn't just about adventure and heroism. It was about survival, family, and the constant fear of loss. Every time Daniel Boone rode into danger, Rebecca faced the possibility she might never see him again. That 15-second scene captured what words never could. Number 11. When philosophy beat violence. Season 2 featured multiple scenes where Mingo used intelligence instead of force to resolve conflict. In one memorable sequence, a group of armed men surrounded him, demanding answers. Mingo stood completely still, unarmed and outnumbered. Then he started talking. He explained the situation from their perspective, acknowledged their anger, and slowly, methodically, talked them into lowering their weapon. No fight scene, no dramatic rescue. Just one man using words to defuse a situation that should have ended in bloodshed. The camera stayed tight on Mingo's face, showing the concentration, the careful choice of every word. You could see him reading the men around him, adjusting his approach based on their reactions. Ed Ames brought such calm authority to these scenes that viewers believed Mingo could talk his way out of anything. His voice never wavered, never showed fear, even when rifles were pointed directly at him. It was a radical choice for a television western in the 1960s. Most shows solved problems with fists or rifles. Daniel Boone proved that intelligence could be just as powerful, sometimes more so. The show trusted its audience to sit through dialogue-heavy scenes without explosions or gunfights to hold their attention. Critics at the time noted how unusual it was to see a Native American character portrayed as the smartest person in any given situation. It challenged decades of stereotypes and gave audiences a different kind of hero to admire. Number 12. The scene that parents complained about. In The Hostages, there's a moment where a child is threatened at gunpoint. The camera shows the child's face, then the gun, then cuts back to the parents' reactions. It lasts maybe 10 seconds total. But those 10 seconds generated more angry phone calls to NBC than any other scene in Season 2. Parents across America were furious. They argued that threatening children on television, even in a fictional context, crossed a line that shouldn't be crossed. NBC received hundreds of letters demanding the show be canceled or moved to a later time slot. The producers stood firm. They pointed out that frontier life was dangerous for everyone, including children. Pretending otherwise would sanitize history and make the show feel dishonest. Remember when TV shows sparked real family arguments? The scene stayed in the episode, but NBC added a longer warning at the beginning. Years later, Fez Parker admitted that moment was intentionally designed to make viewers uncomfortable, not for shock value, but to remind them that the stakes were real. Number 13. The ride into hostile territory. Season 2 perfected a visual motif that appeared in nearly every episode and became synonymous with the show itself. Daniel Boone and Mingo riding side by side into dangerous territory. The camera would start close, showing their determined faces, then slowly pull back to reveal the vast wilderness ahead of them. Mountains, forests, rivers, an endless frontier that could hide any number of threats. The music would swell, that iconic theme that told viewers adventure was coming. But there was always an undercurrent of tension in these scenes. The frontier was beautiful, but it was also deadly. Every ride into unknown territory carried the possibility that one or both riders might not come back. Sometimes the camera would linger on their backs as they rode away, getting smaller and smaller against the landscape until they were barely visible. It made them look vulnerable, reminding viewers that courage doesn't mean invincibility. The production team spent significant time and money getting these shots right. They'd wait for perfect weather, perfect lighting, perfect timing. Sometimes they'd film the same ride 3 or 4 times just to capture the exact moment when the sun hit the mountains just right. The result was a recurring image that felt both epic and intimate. 2 friends facing the unknown together, trusting each other completely. That bond showed in how they rode, perfectly synchronized, neither leading nor following. That visual became so iconic that decades later, people who'd never watched the show still recognized it instantly. Number 14. When the legend showed doubt. There's a scene late in Season 2 where Daniel Boone makes a decision that gets someone hurt. Afterward, he sits alone, visibly shaken, questioning whether he made the right choice. Mingo approaches, and the two have a conversation about leadership, responsibility, and the burden of making decisions when lives hang in the balance. It's a quiet scene, mostly dialogue, but it reveals something crucial about both characters. Boone isn't always certain. He doubts himself. He carries the weight of every choice he makes. And Mingo understands that burden because he faces it too. In 1965, television heroes weren't supposed to show this kind of vulnerability. They were supposed to be confident, decisive, always right. Do you remember when heroes could admit their mistakes on TV? Fez Parker fought for scenes like this. He believed audiences connected more deeply with characters who felt real, who carried emotional scars, who didn't have all the answers. Season 2 proved him right. The more human Daniel Boone became, the more viewers loved him. Number 15. The detail everyone missed. Here's something most viewers never knew about Season 2. Every single episode contained a small historical inaccuracy that bothered Fez Parker deeply. The coonskin cap. Historically, Daniel Boone hated those caps and never wore them. He preferred beaver felt hats. But Americans had conflated Daniel Boone with Davy Crockett, who did wear coonskin, and the myth became stronger than the truth. Parker knew this. The historical consultants knew this. But they also understood something more important. Audiences expected that cap. It had become symbolic, representing the entire frontier era, American expansion, rugged individualism, adventure itself. So Parker wore it, even though it was wrong, even though it was hot, uncomfortable, and historically inaccurate. He wore it because sometimes television creates its own history, and sometimes the legend matters more than the facts. By Season 2, Parker had stopped complaining about the cap. He'd made peace with the myth he was creating. When the Smithsonian later asked for his Daniel Boone cap for their collection, Parker laughed and sent them 3. The symbol that defined a generation was built on a historical mistake that everyone decided was too powerful to correct. Daniel Boone's 1964 series wasn't just another Western on television. It was 6 years of pushing boundaries, creating controversy, and proving that audiences wanted authenticity over safety. From Fez Parker's fight against NBC censors to Ed Ames creating one of television's first truly respected Native American characters, this classic TV show changed what frontier television could be. The coonskin cap became an American symbol. The violence sparked national debates. And those Thursday night adventures created memories that lasted a lifetime. If you grew up watching Daniel Boone in the 1960s, drop a comment below and tell us which episode you remember most. And if you loved this journey back to classic television history, hit that subscribe button for more hidden stories from the shows that defined a generation.